close in on England's total in the first Ashes Test. Good evening. Liberal turned Independent Senator David Van is set to skip the upcoming week of Parliament as the fallout from sexual assault allegations continue. A coalition senator now revealing there were rumours about him before allegations broke. As it stands, misconduct claims have been raised by both Amanda Stoker, a former LNP senator, and current independent Lydia Thorpe, with a third allegation also reported. National Affairs editor Austin Pollock has the very latest.
An embattled senator calling it quits on the Liberal Party, David Van, coming just days after two other members of the Senate and an unnamed third woman came forward with allegations of inappropriate behaviour by him. The first allegations were made on Wednesday by controversial Senator Lydia Thorpe, which were later withdrawn citing parliamentary rules.
Senator Thorpe, I would just warn you at this point,
sexually assaulted me,
Senator
and to
Thorpe,
have him talking about this today is an absolute disgrace.
I have to call you to order. I'm going to have to refer that to the President.
Then, just a day after, former Liberal Senator Amanda Stoker came forward with similar allegations.
Senator David Van inappropriately touched me at an informal social gathering in a parliamentary office. It was not appropriate conduct in a workplace.
In a scathing letter sent by David Van late on Saturday to the Victorian branch president, saying in part, given the Liberal Party's wholesale disregard for due process and natural justice in relation to allegations made against me, I write to resign my membership effective immediately. This is a travesty of justice, and I reiterate that I deny the allegations made against me. I am deeply distressed and hurt that I have not been afforded procedural fairness in relation to these claims. The show of support from some and others, not so much, within the coalition.
You want David Van to be expelled from the Victorian branch of the party?
Well, that's an issue for the division. I've made comments in relation to that matter, and I don't have any other comments today in relation to it.
So do you agree with Barnaby Joyce, or do you think Lydia Thorpe was right to speak up about David Van?
I don't agree with Barnaby Joyce on this matter. Parliamentary privilege is a powerful and very careful part of our democracy in very powerful ways to raise claims and matters of public interest.
The revelations had been rumoured around Parliament for months, picked up on by a national senator.
So were you surprised to hear allegations of this sort made against Senator Van?
I wasn't aware of any specific allegations at all, but as always in this place, and the media would be well aware of this, there are rumours from time to time about certain individuals. So I was aware of rumours,
right,
but I was not
David
aware
Van.
of any, no, and I wasn't aware of the Amanda Stoker allegations either.
This may not be the end of David Van's time in the Senate, saying in his statement he will continue to fight for what he thought were the party's values, just not under its banner. Now there is speculation this evening that he may skip this sitting week in Canberra, which then won't sit again until the 31st of July, which begs the question, will he resign from the Senate altogether? And if not, he will return then, an independent member of the crossbench. In Canberra, Austin Pollock, 6 News.
An elderly man has died after a suspected assault on Queensland's Sunshine Coast. Police said the 87-year-old was found with severe facial injuries in Noosa Heads. Paramedics arrived at the scene, but he died. A 27-year-old man, has been taken into custody after being located around 100 metres from the scene. A homicide investigation has been launched. Indigenous Australians Minister Linda Burney has played down polling that shows slipping support for the Indigenous voice to Parliament. It comes ahead of key legislation for the referendum to happen, expected to be passed in the Senate. Rod Lincoln Holmes has more.
The Indigenous Australians Minister playing down recent polling that shows support for the voice to Parliament dropping.
I do have great faith in the Australian people.
Linda Burney acknowledging that it was always going to be difficult for the Yes campaign, but she has great faith it will succeed.
What are we really saying here? We're saying we're establishing an advisory body that will give practical advice on things like health, education and housing, things that actually affect First Nations people disproportionately. And there is nothing radical in that proposal. It is a proposal that is absolutely making sense to more and more Australians every day.
The most recent news poll showed 46% of Aussies voting yes and 43% voting no, and 11% said they weren't sure. A resolve poll conducted for the 9 newspapers made respondents give a yes or no answer, and that showed no leading at 51 to 49. Legislation for the referendum is set to pass Parliament this week. In the Senate, Labor, the Greens, David Pocock and the Jackie Lambie Network are in favour of the voice. On the other side, the Liberals and Nationals are formally opposed, although there has been division in both parties. Liberal Senator Andrew Bragg says he's a long-term supporter of the concept. One Nation and the United Australia Party are also opposed, while independent Lydia Thorpe is abstaining. Lincoln Holmes, 6 News.
A man has been charged after allegedly holding tram passengers at knife point in Melbourne CBD yesterday. The 57-year-old was tasered before being taken into custody, one passenger receiving minor injuries. He's been charged with armed robbery, false imprisonment, threats to kill and assault. The Greens have announced Scott Turner as their candidate for the upcoming by-election in the seat of Thadden. 6 News understands Sally Spain, who ran the seat in 2022, withdrew her candidacy before any formal announcement was made. Turner himself has been a candidate for the Greens at the local, state and federal level in Queensland. Meanwhile, the Legalised Cannabis Party have also now said they will contest the Gold Coast electorate, adding on to a growing list of minor parties, including One Nation and the ACP, as well as 2 independents. Local councillor Cameron Caldwell is the LNP's pick. Donald Trump is in the lead over Joe Biden in a hypothetical 2024 presidential contest. 45% of the just over 2,000 respondents said they would vote for Trump, and 39% said they would vote for Biden if the election was held now. 15% said they weren't sure. It comes as the fallout from Trump's second indictment continues. And North American correspondent Wyatt Sharp is on the ground in Washington, D.C. with more.
Here in the nation's capital, out front of Capitol here, where several lawmakers are critical of the most recent move by Special Counsel Jack Smith in the classified documents investigation in relation to former President Trump to ultimately indict him. This is, of course, the second indictment that former President Trump has faced over the course of the past just several months. In April, facing an indictment over the hush money payment made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. Now facing the indictment in relation to the classified documents investigation, where Trump took these documents from Washington back to his Florida estate at Mar-a-Lago. A lot of people are critical, including Democrats here on the Hill, about where these documents were found, saying that in many cases they were found in unsecure locations at Mar-a-Lago. Now, of course, Leo, you will remember that last year in the summer, the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago in essentially in efforts to try and find where these documents were located and to see what the next steps ultimately needed to be. This indictment is certainly just one of many indictments that have already taken place and that we can expect to take place over the course of the next several months as well. He is facing a possible indictment over pressuring Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, to, quote, find over 11,000 votes in order to try and sway Georgia's 16 electoral votes in favor of the race to 270 back in the 2020 election campaign. Back onto what we are experiencing here on the Hill, you have several lawmakers. Representative Nancy Mace, she has spoken with many outlets, including recently speaking with CBS News, where she was critical of this indictment. Now, a common theme from Republicans here on the Hill is talking about a political prosecution, how they do not believe that it is fair that someone like the Department of Justice, like Special Counsel Jack Smith, makes this indictment because it can appear political, because Republicans are saying that Joe Biden is trying to essentially eliminate his main rival at this point in time from ultimately participating in the 2024 presidential campaign. Of course, Donald Trump is the main front runner in the campaign at this point in time over people like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Also, though, people like South Carolina, former South Carolina governor, former United Nations ambassador under Trump, Nikki Haley, Donald Trump overwhelmingly the front runner. And as of recently, a lot of these candidates, they have been, it seems, reluctant to come out and at least be semi-critical of someone like Donald Trump. But that has changed a little bit over the course of the past little while. You have some candidates now, like the former New Jersey governor, Chris Christie, who just announced recently that he has not been afraid, frankly, to come out and call out former President Trump. You also have people like the former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who has publicly called on Donald Trump to withdraw and drop out of the race due to this indictment. Certainly, this will have an impact on the 2024 campaign. His fundraising numbers, both after the hush money indictment, but also now after the classified documents investigation, his fundraising numbers are really through the roof, which Republican strategists tell me will only help him in his race for the White House and the Oval Office in 2024.
A driver has crashed into a school building in Melbourne's northeast this morning just before 10 a.m. Authorities say a 37-year-old man suffered critical injuries after crashing into Hillsville High School. He was airlifted to hospital with life-threatening injuries after initially being treated at the scene. It's understood he was the only occupant of the vehicle. Speculation over the political future of Victorian Premier Dan Andrews continues, even as he continues to maintain he will stay on for a full third term in office. But after the resignation of Mark McGowan last month and other leaders also quitting, could he really last until the 2026 election? Political editor Roman McKinnon has the details.
Following the shock resignation of Western Australian Premier Mark McGowan, some people are now asking the question, who else is next? Of the 8 premiers and chief ministers who gained a national profile through COVID press conferences in 2020 and 2021, only 3 remain. Michael Gunner and Peter Gutwin quit. Stephen Marshall lost 2022 South Australian election. Gladys Berejiklian resigned and was replaced by Dominic Perrottet, who also recently lost in the New South Wales election. And now McGowan is gone as well. This only leaves Victorian Premier Dan Andrews, Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk, and ACT Chief Minister Andrew Barr. Andrews and Barr have been serving for near identical periods of time, while Palaszczuk was elected a year after in 2015. But are any of them actually going to go? Barr said in an interview last year that while he won't still be leading after 25 or 30 years, he does intend to contest the 2024 territory election and won't step down in the foreseeable future. As it stands, he will become the longest-serving Chief Minister in the Territory's history by the end of this term. Palaszczuk won't be surpassing that record in Queensland anytime soon, but if she stays in office until the 2024 state election, which some think Labor will lose, she will have surpassed Peter Beattie as the 4th longest-serving leader. It's worth noting Beattie himself had a succession plan with Anna Bligh taking over following his retirement in 2007. But Andrews doesn't face election until 2026. A day after last year's election, he said he wouldn't quit in this term. In February, he said the same thing, and he said it once again after McGowan's decision. This would make Andrews the 2nd longest serving Premier in Victoria. And while Queensland Labor could lose in 2024, Victoria, the ACT and WA appear much more likely to stay in Labor's control.
The royal family has celebrated King Charles III's first birthday parade. The attendees included Queen Camilla, Princess Kate, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. Thousands watched a flypast comprised of around 70 aircraft from the Royal Navy, British Army and Royal Air Force. Charles also rode on horseback, for it was his first trooping the colour. The sport now in Australia is set to resume batting as they close in on England's total in day 3 of the first Ashes test. That total has been helped by a half-century from keeper Alex Carey and a century from Usman Khawaja. Senior reporter Darby Travers has the latest developments.
Australia has edged towards England's total in the first day of the Ashes test, 5 out of the 311 at the end of day 5, compared to England's 8 for 393 when they declared. Overnight was the first full day of batting for the Aussies. David Warner was out for 9 and Steve Smith out for 16, while Travers Head managed to notch up a half-century. Currently, Usman Khawaja remains not out on 126 of 279 balls, while wicketkeeper Alex Carey is also in with 52 of 80. Both of them were lucky. At one point, Kawaja was bowled out, but it did end up being a no ball, and Carey was dropped not too long after. For England, though, Stuart Broad and Moeen Ali have taken the most wickets with 2 each, while captain Ben Stokes also has one. Out of the 72 Ashes series in history, Australia has won the most with 34. England is not too far behind with 32, and there's been another 6 that have also been drawn.
All right, now let's check in with Ivan and Millie with all what's making news right now on WAMN News.
Thanks, Leo. Tonight on WAMN News, Roger Cook to face a major test as leader, with local Labor branches feeling ignored over candidate selection. Peter Kennedy's exclusive analysis.
Also tonight, growing petition to delay the Aboriginal heritage laws as community concerns skyrocket.
Details emerge over nurses in regional WA facing a 24-hour shift due to staff shortages.
The No campaign presents their argument against a voice to Parliament, and later Dr Andrew Miller's comment. Join us tonight on the WAMN News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Reminder of the top stories we are following on 6 News this hour, and Liberal-turned Independent Senator David Van is set to skip the upcoming week of Parliament as the fallout from sexual assault allegations continue. Misconduct allegations have been raised by both Amanda Stoker and Lydia Thorpe, with a third also reported. And Indigenous Australians Minister Linda Burney has played down polling that shows slipping support for the voice. It comes ahead of key legislation for the referendum to happen, which is expected to be passed in the Senate. And that is 6 News for this hour. There is more news 24/7 on our websites, SIXNewsAU.com, and on social media. Just search 6NewsAU to find us. More news coverage continues right after this. For now, though, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.